All right, good morning, everyone. It's another edition of the Optrics Insider. I'm Scott Young with Optrics Engineering, and with me I have Sean Sturby, our Technical Services Manager. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Scott.
So we usually have 3 topics, but today we have 4. So I'm just going to list them off, and then we are going to go through them one by one. So the first one we're going to talk about is FBI warning of malicious banking apps. And we're going to talk about Internet of Troubles versus the Internet of Things, I guess, is the play on there. 3 is IBM Cloud was down for over 2 hours. And then finally, Honda and the city of Knoxville were hit by malware. So let's start with the first one, FBI warning of malicious banking apps.
Right. So as people are locked down and they're trying to do more things online, one of the things people are going to is online banking apps. Mm-hmm. So it is great that the banks have those apps, but what FBI is warning is that it is now the fastest growing sector of smartphone-based fraud is to try and get a malicious app on your phone so that they can intercept your online banking. Most people are doing it for the phones. So a couple of things that they recommend. Download all apps, not just the banking apps, from approved stores, i.e. no side loading. Don't try and find a hacked version of Game X on some dodgy site just because you want to play it. Okay. Don't use a short password. Use a long, strong passphrase. The XKCD example of horse battery staple. That's a much longer word, and if you throw in some additional things in there, it can make it to be a much harder password. As 8-character passwords, the minimum that a lot of sites require, those can be broken in about 21 seconds. So don't want to rely just on a short little password. Don't reuse passwords. If you can, use some form of multi-factor or 2-factor authentication. The FBI site does say that hardware tokens are preferred, assuming that your banking site actually has that, especially over something like a text message to your phone. If you've got a Trojan bad app on your phone already, well, they can read your text messages, so they're going to be able to get that. There's a lot of good push notifications where you try and log in, and then it will tell an app on your phone, are you trying to log in, and you can then approve and deny that. So those are good things to do.
So it would seem to me that that's more of an issue perhaps for Android phones, at least, than iPhones. And I'm mostly thinking that Android apps or Android phones, it's more easy to download or sideload, I guess that you call them, apps from different non-Google Play Store sites, whereas my understanding with iPhones, you can only get the apps from the App Store.
It's not entirely true, but it requires jailbreaking your phone and doing some other things to do that.
So the common person or common user, I should say, with an iPhone probably won't have a jailbroken phone, or knowingly anyways, but just something to point out. Cool. Okay, let's talk about the Internet of Troubles.
Okay, Internet of Troubles. There's a lot of things, Internet of Things, that now include smarts. These can include things like fridges, toasters, TVs, that streaming box that you use, a thermostat, security cameras, an alarm system, even smart speakers. They are somehow connected to the internet. And at some point, they're going to need an update. Now, right now, what's happening is that some of the root certificates that were used to sign the certificates used on these smart things, they are being expired. They're now 20 years old, and we've started to see this already. There was an example last month where a Roku device needed an update because they couldn't connect, because the root certificate that they were trusting to validate every other site that you went to had expired. So since they couldn't compare the site back to that root, it couldn't actually get anywhere. So, question. Did you think to update your fridge firmware this week?
I'm not sure if you call it a dumb fridge, but I don't have a smart fridge, that's for sure.
So all of these types of devices, there are some updates. You want to make sure that they are updated on a semi-regular basis, just like you would change your the battery in your smoke alarm once a year. And there's a backup day that people are notified about. Maybe you should have a update all my devices day once a year. You know, maybe first thing in the new year as part of your New Year's resolution, I'm going to try and lose a little weight. I'm going to get more active, and I'm going to update all my devices.
I think with this, the fire alarms, isn't it spring forward and fall back? Or they recommend are the days that you should at least change the batteries on your fire smoke detector. So maybe you can do it twice a year if you do everything at the same time.
That would be even better. But
Excellent.
how many end users are going to know that their smart fridge requires or smart toaster requires a firmware update and how to initiate it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is most people not knowing how to do it.
Mhm.
If I had a smart fridge, I'd, you know, as a guy, we don't often want to look at manuals and find out. But I guess if you buy one, you probably should make sure you do the updates. Okay, let's move on. Third one, the IBM Cloud. It was down for over 2.5 hours, and I heard, and I've heard this definition before, but the definition of the cloud is really your data on someone else's computer. It seems to be the way that most people are doing things these days, but just remember at a basic level, the cloud is your data on someone else's computer, in this case, IBM's.
Correct, yeah. It's not one of the more well-known clouds, but IBM does have a cloud and they run a number of services out there, and people can sign up for it just like they can for the Azure or Amazon Web Service or all of these other clouds. In this case, the cloud, the IBM cloud was down everywhere. The outage report says that it had to do with inadequate protection as far as bandwidth coming in and routing. So it looks like they had a bad infrastructure update that allowed too much traffic in and basically took out not one, but it sounded like 17 or 19 different data centers around the world. Took some time to get it worked out too. So yeah, cloud is great in that you can quite often save money or you can get some reliability and redundancy, but clouds are not 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the pro of a cloud is you can quickly implement things and deploy things in most often, especially with the larger clouds, with infrastructure you can never afford. But that also assumes that they are robust and are able to withstand things, and even the big players have issues. So I guess you have to factor that in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, finally, Honda and the city of Knoxville are hit by malware.
All right, so it was over the last week. Honda said that a cyber attack on its global network was affecting production operations. They actually had to stop producing vehicles because of this cyber attack. Now, it's not notable that they got hit. Everybody is under attack these days. What's notable in the case of Honda is that they were hit in 2017 by the WannaCry ransomware. So you'd think that if they had been hit once, that they would have systems in place to try and stop things. And as a larger corporation, you'd think they'd have some pretty deep pockets to do this. The fact that they got hit in 2017 and now again in 2020, maybe they got a little relaxed as far as, oh, everything seems to be working, but the attacks are getting more advanced. So that was the interesting note.
Interesting. Now, okay, so here's a question for you, Sean. Um, with these manufacturers getting attacked, and obviously you can't say for sure, but is there a possibility that if Honda gets attacked, if perhaps then the malware hackers can get malware onto the vehicles themselves? Perhaps that was something behind it.
That is a possibility. They got access to their production operations network, so don't know what they're looking for. Maybe they want to get the firmware on the onboard computers in a vehicle and see if they're exploitable, or maybe they were just after the low-hanging fruit and ransomware. We've locked up all your data. If you don't want to have it sent elsewhere or disappear forever, please pay us. That's typically their motivation.
Oh, and actually that brings up speaking of malware, we saw one last week that we basically, one of our contact forms, actually several of our contact forms got an email saying that they had downloaded a bunch of our data off of our website, and they were one of our websites, and they were going to do bad things with it unless we paid Bitcoin. So the ransomware instance, of course, we forwarded it to you, and you said not
legit.
not legit, and it's a known. And I think you even found a couple of sites that showed the exact text that we were shown. So you're like, don't panic. This is nothing happened. So maybe you want to talk briefly about that.
It's just a form of blackmailware. We've seen it before with others that you get an email claiming, oh, you did something nasty and we got it caught on your webcam. So,
right.
If you don't want the video released, please pay us 2 Bitcoin,
right,
which could be a few $100s. In this case, it was, we hacked your website and downloaded all of your customer data, and we're going to release it unless you pay us Bitcoin. Our web developer pointed out it's very hard for them to download our customer database because we don't host our customer database online anywhere. So
yeah,
there was nothing for them to download.
that's
It's
right.
just they're trying to get people to panic and pay their Bitcoin so that somebody can come back and say, oh, thank you for your money. Yeah, we don't have anything.
Yeah. So I guess the lesson learned there is do your research before you panic.
Correct.
So, and thank you for being the resource, Sean, for that. No, we didn't panic because we see these type of things all the time, but just something to be aware of if it happens to you. All right. Well, so just to summarize what we talked about today, the FBI warning about malicious banking apps. So make sure that if you do download apps, you're going to the legitimate store for your type of phone. The Internet of Troubles. So if you have Internet of Things at your house or in your office, make sure, such as a smart fridge, a Nest, I guess a Google Nest thermostat, make sure you're updating the firmware at least once, if not twice a year or more. IBM Cloud was down for a couple of hours, so it does happen to the big players. And finally, Honda in the city of Knoxville were hit by malware. So it does happen to well-known organizations. I guess perhaps the bigger you are, the larger target you are, but it does happen to smaller organizations as well. So anything else you'd like to add, or are we good for today there, Sean?
In the case of Knoxville, the interesting thing wasn't that they were attacked, but that this is reported now as the 51st U.S. city or state that has been hit by ransomware this year, i.e. in just the last 6 months.
Wow.
So that's all I've got to add.
Okay. Thank you for that. So if you found this video or other videos helpful and you want to see more, please share, like, and subscribe. Of course, if you have a comment, please do leave that. And if you have a question that you'd like or a topic you'd like Sean to address, please leave that in the comments below. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great week. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.
Bye.